I recently calculated the amount of money that I invested in my home studio, and yeah, I'm at over $50,000, which is crazy. It sounds like a lot, and it is, but it's consistently been my #1 investment for several years now. Like most producers, I started off with an IKEA desk, some speakers, and a laptop, and now I'm completely surrounded on all sides by gear from some of my favorite companies. This is a video that's been requested quite a bit, so I'm giving it to you. There's gonna be plenty of gear company name drops, none of which are sponsoring me though in any way for this video. So yeah, no one's making me say anything. This is just me and my setup as it is in the month of March 2021. There's a lot to go over, so let's do this. We'll start by breaking this room down. It's a tiny old room in an old building, which is my home. In terms of soundproofing, there really isn't all that much. I've got the back baffle there, and I've also got one on the ceiling as well.
I forgot to mention this sound diffuser, which helps as well.
And even just that helps a lot. It sounds dry enough. There are no speakers on this desk. I know that this may be controversial to many. I mix 100% in headphones. I use HD 600s. At this point, I don't really have the budget or space for a room that's professionally tuned for speakers. Also, even rooms that are professionally tuned aren't always reliable anyways, in my experience. But with headphones, as long as you're in a quiet space and you're mixing at low volumes, you should be good to go. I think the best way to break down my workflow and setup is in stations. I currently have 3 stations, which are constantly changing depending on what gear is out. My main station is my desk. Obviously. It's where I spend about 90% of my time in this room and like in my life. Staring at these 2 screens here. Here we've got my main screen, screen 1, and of course, we've got my laptop screen. All these wires here, just ignore those wires. This desk is also where I film most, and it's just where I have the best like lighting setup. In fact, my camera is sitting on the desk right now. Right there. Having an IKEA desk is cool. There's plenty of people that are making that work. This desk though, it really is a whole other level. It's modeled after the Output platform desk, I think it's called. I actually didn't buy it directly from them because I thought that with shipping, it was a little bit too expensive. There's several easily accessible resources online for you to find a way to build the desk on your own, or even just finding a handy person to build it for you. It's still a cheaper alternative than buying it from Output and then having them ship it to you. When I finally did set up this desk, I instantly felt more professional. First off, it's massive with plenty of storage space. It's got 3 shelves, I guess you'd call them. The top shelf is where I keep my first bigger screen, sound recording gear, plenty of space to move gear or cameras around. The middle shelf has tons of storage. It's where I keep my laptop, my keyboard, mouse. There's also plenty of space here to feature and record gear. I could have an overhead camera on the top shelf looking down on the second shelf. And then the bottom shelf is a keyboard rollout shelf, which I actually don't use at all these days. There's little holes in the desk for wire routing, which is extremely convenient for my setup. Things are constantly changing here, so I literally just leave cables out, ready to be plugged into the next instrument. I leave some gear accessible at my desk at all times. I've got the KeyStep 37, which is a great MIDI keyboard as well as controller. I've also got my OPZ as well as my OP1 at arm's reach, so I could use them at all times, protected by my analog cases. Let's take a look at my audio recording gear, which is also sitting at my desk. This piece here is like an external extension. It's not part of the desk. It was specifically made as a rack for this gear. On the top, we have the Apogee Ensemble, which is super high quality and gives me everything that I need for my setup. This is like the mothership of this whole operation. It controls the audio of every single piece of gear in this room and records it into my DAW. Under that, I have a Neve 1073 DPA. It's 2 channels. So for those of you who know about preamps, you really just can't go wrong with Neve. They've been an industry standard for like decades now. If you go to any professional studio, guaranteed they have Neve preamps or at least a clone of Neve preamps. To my right, we have Station 2. This is where I keep my record player for sampling records. It's an Audio-Technica AT-LP60. It's definitely not high quality, but it does the job. Right beside that, I have my Tascam Portastudio 424 MK2, which is essentially a cassette recorder. These two work really well together, mainly because of the buttery smooth pitching capabilities of the Tascam. I mean, of course, you could pitch and slow down your samples in your DAW, but there's just something about doing it through tape. We still haven't really figured out a way to imitate the smoothness of magnets and metal tape. And so here's how this workflow goes. Essentially, I'll find a sample that I like, record it into the Tascam, pitch it down or up. I would say down most of the time using the pitch knob of the Tascam. Then I'll bounce that over to my DAW for further processing. And then beside all of that, I have my MPC-1. These 3 work really really nicely together. So currently this is my sampling station. If we roll on to the right again, we've got some beautiful plant life. And then beside that station is station number 3, which once again is constantly changing depending on what gear I have on display. Currently we have the JU06A, which is a tiny little boutique Juno, the cutest thing ever. Next to that we have the Digitone, as well as the SP404. Next to that we have the PO400. This is actually the only piece of fully modular gear that I own, as well as this tiny little sampler. This is the PO128. It's the Mega Man edition. I've covered most of this gear right here on YouTube if you're looking for some more love. And of course we have the wonderful Wurlitzer 200A, which I'm actually afraid of playing right now because it's pretty late and my neighbors might be asleep. I honestly haven't been using it that much. It needs a bit of work and it's been kind of tough to find someone to come over and fix it with the whole COVID situation going on. Understandable, but it still sounds great. It's very smooth. And what do you know? There's actually another piece of gear here on top of the Wurlitzer. This is the Mini Brute 2S, which I still need to explore more before posting any sort of related content. I have plenty more machines, but it really is just too overwhelming to keep them out all at once. I also just don't have the desk space. Currently, it's all in this little closet, nicely protected by analog cases. Let's take a look at what I use for software and streaming. I've been a proud Logic Pro 10 and now Logic Pro user for close to 10 years now. I've never used any other DAW. It does everything I want it to do and more. No thoughts about changing. I'm satisfied. As for streaming, I now use 2 computers to do that. I did try streaming with just my Mac and it really just didn't work out at all. So now I have a separate PC that takes on the full load of streaming so that my Mac can focus 100% on using Logic Pro or whatever software that I might be using. I'm using an Elgato Cam Link to screen share my session from Mac over to the PC. All audio from the Mac, which is routed to my Apogee Ensemble, is being routed to a second sound card, the Zoom H5, which is then routed to OBS for live streaming. This setup makes for an exceptionally smooth stream, which keeps everyone happy. I use the Slate Digital ML1 for my streaming vocal just because of how crisp it is. This is also my go-to mic for literally everything else that I record. Claps, vocals, acoustic guitar, perks, anything. I do also have a Shure SM7B, but I don't find it really compares to the Slate ML1. Filming gear. My main camera is the Canon RP with the Canon EF 24x105mm lens. Honestly, my cam gear knowledge isn't super strong. I'm not sure what the full name of the lens is, so here's a shot of the lens. Yeah, the quality's great. I have a second cam that I currently use for my overhead shots. That's the Canon Rebel SL2 with a Sigma wide autofocus lens. The vocal audio that you hear right now is being recorded through my Zoom H5. It has a stereo mic for vocals as well as 2 channels for instruments. So if I'm featuring a machine in the video, I'll record that along with the vocal audio. It's just an easy sync afterwards. For video editing software, I've used DaVinci Resolve, the free version, for close to 2 years now. I've very recently just updated to the studio version, which is the paid version of DaVinci Resolve. It's definitely a step up in terms of features, but the quality is pretty much the same. That is definitely something to consider before paying for any sort of video editing subscription. And of course, there's lighting, which is very important to me as a content creator. There's a lot of lighting situations going on in this room. I have several LED lights that I just move around the room depending on how I want my lighting to look. Always experimenting with that sort of thing, even in this video. In the past 2 years, I've fully transformed from a performer / producer over to a full-on content creator. And this is a setup that I've developed over these 2 years and will continue to develop throughout my whole career. I mean, there's no real such thing as like the perfect studio. It's something that's constantly developing and you just have to enjoy the process. I hope that answers some of your questions. I'm super lucky and humbled to be in the position that I'm in right now, and you guys are the ones to thank most, so thank you so much. Your engagement really is the most valuable thing. If you have any other questions, please let me know in the comments. I hope that this breakdown was somewhat insightful for you. Maybe it'll inspire you to change or develop your own setup, and that's a win for both of us. I've left purchase links to a bunch of gear that I use in the description of this video. Disclaimer, if you use those links to purchase, I actually get a small commission from those, so that really helps my channel out. Drop a comment, like, subscribe for more content like this. As always, I really appreciate you guys for watching. I can't thank you enough, and I'll see you next time. Ciao, ciao.